It's okay for me. Sure.
Let's go.
So are we online now? Okay.
Yes, at the moment is online.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I would like to welcome all to this session on energy efficiency and the future strategies of the energy industry. I've got the pleasure and the honor to chair this session today with distinguished speakers I know the speakers from last year's conference. It was a similar session. Now we're going to repeat the session, but under very different challenging conditions. So what are the current challenges and future challenges to the energy industry? This will be an interesting outcome to see. Now, all our speakers are here at this time. Welcome Dario Di Santo as well.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, and I'm gonna start in the order of announcement in the program with Sandro Neri, and I'm going to introduce the speakers briefly. The speakers will have 15 minutes time for their presentations and speeches, and afterwards there will be also a Q&A session. At the end of each speaker, if you have questions, please type into the chat room. So Sandro Neri is former manager of Enel. He worked for Enel from 1989 to 2017. He is coordinator currently of the Energy Commission of Federmanager, Italian Federation of Energy Managers. He coordinated 4 studies and research on the green economy developed by the Italian Association for Energy Economics and Federmanager. He is also board member of IWS, Company of Welfare and Health, of Confindustria and Federmanager. Okay, Mr. Neri, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Okay, let me okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to give you a short presentation on behalf of Federmanager regarding the current situation of energy efficiency in its future perspective in Italy. Before going into details of the presentation, let me give you a brief overview of Federmanager. Don't move the presentation. Sorry. Okay. Federmanager is a key association representing managers who lead companies that produce goods and services. We have been active since 1945. We focus on multiple aspects such as contractual, institutional, social, professional, cultural. How you can see, Federmanager has a central national structure as well as a local presence. For several years, Federmanager has established a solid scientific relationship with AIEE, drawing up 4 reports on contemporary energy topics, such as energy security and efficiency, decarbonization, circular economy, and last but not least, energy communities. The last one that will be presented on next February with a specific conference. Our long-term goal is to become the main interlocutors of politicians and stakeholders both in Italy and Europe. From 2021, Federal Manager and IEEE are going to start a new collaboration by drawing up a monthly energy observatory based on fundamental Italy energy topics. Now we will go into the details of the presentation, which will be divided into 3 parts. The first section regarding the European Green Deal and the 2030 objectives. The second part will focus on the situation in Italy, based on National Energy and Climate Plans, NECP or PNIEC in Italian language, and energy efficiency targets in Italy. And the third section will address the transitional process, particularly the circular economy and energy communities. Firstly, let me say that to achieve the 2050 net zero emissions goal, we need to pay close attention to green energy issues and the decarbonization process. But most importantly, in the next decade, we need action, not words. By using energy more efficiently and thereby consuming less, Europeans can reduce their energy bills, improve their quality of life, mitigate climate change, and reduce reliance on external suppliers. To attain these benefits, it is fundamental to improve energy efficiency throughout the full energy chain, from production or to final consumption, implementing circularity programs. As it was discussed during the session, EU Energy Roadmaps to 2050 and the fiscal policies apply by colleague Dr. Carrino, collaborator in the drafting of the 4th reports, the circular economy and energy recovery, are fundamental pillars to achieve energy efficiency goals. Now, to highlight the first part of the presentation, the European Green Deal, the EU Action Plan aims to restoring biodiversity and reducing pollution to improve people's health, to promoting the efficient use of resources by moving to a clear and circular economy. To reach these goals, the EU will need to invest in environmentally friendly technologies, introduce cleaner, cheaper, and healthier forms of private and public transportation, decarbonize the energy sector, ensure superior buildings, energy efficiency, and collaborate with international partners to improve global environmental standards. This slide summarizes the key 2030 targets for Europe, which are a 55% reduction of greenhouse gas emission compared to 1990 levels, a minimum of 32% of renewable energy, and an improvement of at least 32.5% in energy efficiency. To meet the EU's energy and climate targets for 2030, each EU member state has to establish a 10 years integrated national energy and climate plan for the time period from 2021 and 20 to 2030. European measures will focus on sectors where the potential for energy saving is the greatest, such as buildings, or where a harmonized approach across the state members is necessary, like energy labeling. The purpose of this is to create new opportunities for sustainable growth and green jobs by reducing Europeans' dependence on energy importation. Moreover, achieving these goals will ensure a secure and stable EU energy supply and affordable energy for all consumers. The PNIEC established that national targets for 2030 on energy efficiency, renewable sources and the reduction of CO2 emissions. Here we see the summary of the key 2030 targets for Italy from the National Energy and Climate Plan. Focusing on energy efficiency, we need to achieve a 43% reduction in primary energy consumption with respect to the previous 2007 scenarios. This goal is much more ambitious than the average European goal of 32.5% and a 39.7% reduction in final energy consumption. The plan is divided into 5 steps: research, innovation and competitiveness, development of the internal energy market, decarbonization, energy security, and finally, energy efficiency. Energy efficiency in Italy will mainly be achieved within the residential and the transport sectors. The margin of increase in energy efficiency in the industrial sector is indeed lower, as most of the efficiency has already been achieved. In this graph, based on Eurostat data, we can see the primary energy intensity evolution, and you can appreciate that Italy has the best performance among the main manufacturing economies in Europe. The primary energy intensity is defined as the amount of primary energy needed to produce a unit of gross domestic production. Therefore, this is a measure of how much a country is energy efficient. Italy's positive results have primarily been driven by the industrial sector, which has historically invested in energy efficient, processed, and systems. The Italian power sector and manufacturing system is among the most efficient in Europe and worldwide. In this graph, based on Eurostat data, we can see the primary energy intensity in some EU 28 countries. The Italian primary energy intensity in 2018 is 2.4% lower compared to 2017 data. This graph shows that the Italian power sector and the manufacturing system are among the most efficient in all Europe, after UK, followed by Germany, France, and Spain. How can we achieve energy efficiency? Firstly, it is important to improve how people consume energy by growing circular economy and energy recovery system, which are often suitable for small communities and neighborhoods. Secondly, by creating local energy communities and developing innovative methods of management and control of an electricity grid through distribution logics, we will increase energy efficiency in the cycle of production, transport, and distribution of electricity. Finally, other important ways to achieve energy efficiencies are promoting citizens' ethics, reducing citizens' energy waste, implementing consumer awareness, and investing in digitalization and technologies such as cogeneration. Energy recovery and energy communities are two of the possible tools tools needed to increase energy efficiency. Both are less explored and more promising for the future, under our opinion. The energy community must be integrated with other sources of energy production, such as electricity, heat, and waste disposal. It can help to mitigate the concept of NIMBY, not in my backyard. A person who does not want something unpleasant to be built or done near their life. And this concept is very active in Italy. The energy recovery's meaning is to convert non-recyclable waste materials into usable heat, electricity, or fuel through a variety of processes, including combustion, gasification, pyrolyzation, anaerobic digestion, and landfill gas. Pyrolysis is defined as a process of temperature decomposition of organic material in the absence of oxygen. This process has three steps, renewable energy, thermal conversion process, resulting are fuel, liquid fuel, syngas, and char. Therefore, the polymer are placed in a reactor and brought to the temperature of 700, 800 centigrades. Due to the heat, the plastic decomposes into syngas, liquid fuel, and char. Raw materials, which are non-recyclable waste, such as plastic, normally destined to end up in landfills, environment, and incinerators, which cause considerable CO2 emission issues. Using pyrolysis, non-recyclable waste would become valuable, resulting in an incentive to its correct management and preventing it from being dispersed in the environment, causing pollution. Energy community are a way to organize collective energy actions around open, democratic participation and governance, and the provision of benefits for the members of the local community. The aim of energy communities is to move from a single concentrated generation to a distributed generation coming from an energy mixture composed of renewable energy, energy recovery, circular economy, and energy efficiency. One of the possible configuration called the energy community is the exchange of energy between residential units and the same building. In this way, buildings can become aware prosumers and invest in improving energy efficiency, allowing residents to install photovoltaic system. The direct exchange of energy would make electricity consumption more efficient by sharing electrical utilities and exchanging the energy accumulated for each user thanks to accumulators. On top of this, distributed production is also useful for easing network burden, avoiding distribution overload, cutting down transport cost, double the cost of energy, penalizing Italian companies, and energy dispatching, and reducing network losses, achieving energy efficiency results. To conclude, Italy is among the most energy efficient countries in Europe and worldwide. This is evident from the evolution of the energy intensity curves for different countries, as shown previously. Such performance has primarily been driven by industrial sector, including the power sector. In this positive scenario, it is fundamental to implement measures such as energy communities, capable of improving buildings' energy efficiency, reducing energy bills, and preserving the environment and the citizens' quality of life while creating new green jobs. Energy efficiency will play a central role in achieving the 2030 targets of both Europe and Italy according to PNIEC. The actual achievement of this target will depend on the regulatory framework and how it will enable investments. Energy efficiency needs investment, and crowdfunding could be an alternative finance tool that allows the raising of capital for a project or a company through web platform. This is a possible solution to increase citizen participation in renewable energy investments and in energy communities project. We are at the end of the presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Neri, for a brilliant presentation. I would like to invite attendees who have questions to type in their questions in the chat room. Meanwhile, I would like to ask the first question. I'm curious about the Italian national energy and climate intensity targets. You had a graph there. Curious in the sense that what is it this year, because you also had 2020 as a target there. Of course, the year is not over, we don't have any data, but how do you expect, because this is the extraordinary year with all the lockdowns and coronavirus, how do you expect the energy intensity in 2020 to come out at the end?
We expect to decrease this curve in this year. I believe that is normal because all industrial sector is in difficulties, and also the consumption of citizens is in difficulties.
Yes, but also the economy shrinks, so GDP is also lower. But you expect more of a decline in energy intensity, the way I see it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I see there are no questions from the attendees, so then we can proceed with the second speaker. It's Mr. Ferdinando Pozzani, and Mr. Pozzani is co-founder and CEO of Theon. Theon is a new company manufacturing, marketing innovative solutions for renewable heating and cooling of buildings with patented products that are economically viable alternative to traditional heating systems. Now, Mr. Pozzani has a BS degree in civil engineering with a major in transportation from La Sapienza University. Then he's got an MBA degree with major in finance from New York University, 1995. And he has worked as a principal for A.T. Kearney, for Booz Hamilton, Italy, and he's been chairman and CEO of Verbund Italia from 2007 to 2014. Mr. Pozzani, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Mr. Kombaroglu, and good morning to all our attendees. I will share the screen with the PowerPoints, with my PowerPoint view. I hope you are getting it.
Yes, we can see this very well.
Talking about energy efficiency, I'd like to draw, say, a cone of light on a sector which traditionally has not been that outlined in the domain of energy consumption, which is the thermal energy, which accounts in terms of consumption as much as the energy, the electricity, and which is mainly determined by the situation of our buildings in Italy. We have residential building, commercial building, industrial buildings, all of them consume thermal energy. If we go and look at the reduction targets that have been set up by the most recent Energy Performance of Building Directive in 2018, which has been endorsed in Italy in 2020, this directive calls for a reduction of what is consumed by buildings and which now accounts for 36%, so about 40% of the final energy consumption. So it's a big chunk actually of consumption. There are several guidelines that the directive provides to each member state. I highlighted a couple of them, which in my view are very relevant. One is to deploy a strategy to rejuvenize our building system in order to reach an almost near zero emission building by 2050. And of course, there will be interim gateways to be achieved, and to encourage the deployment on automation, on management systems, in a word, of the digitalization of the buildings and therefore of the thermal energy. How are we far from the electrification of thermal consumption here in Italy? And from the introduction of renewable energy in the consumption of Italian thermal energy. If we look at the data, they are not very comfortable. If some revolution took off for the introduction of renewable sources in other domains, such as the generation of electricity, with the aeolic, with the photovoltaic, and in the transportation, with the attention on hybrids and electrical vehicles, this we cannot say has so far taken place in the thermal energy. When we talk about thermal energy, we talk about a range of 60 megatons of oil equivalent of consumption in Italy, out of which 11 can be accounted as being renewables. If we look at these renewables, there is a difference compared to the renewables that we have in the, say, electricity generation, because in the thermal energy, biomasses are considered renewables, which from a regulatory point of view is correct. From a pollution point of view, of course, you may imagine that it is another story. So as of today, only 3 megatons of oil equivalent of thermal energy is out of 60. And if you look out of about 120 on an annual basis, is produced by non-emissive technologies to produce heating. If we look at the residential building sector in Italy, here we can also start understanding where the reasons lie. As you see in the residential buildings, only a fraction of percentage is produced by technologies that do not use fuel combustion. and therefore which are non-emissive. If we look at the sector and the contribution that they have to the particulated matters deployment in the climate, we can see that most of single sectors, although these data are not particularly new, but the story has not changed. All the sectors have done a decent job to intervene on the efficiency and on the, say, environmental efficiency of the sectors, such as the industry, which has reduced the contribution by 56.7%. Of course, not only attributable to improvement in the efficiency, but also to a downturn in the economical cycle. Road transportation as well, also other transports, agriculture and others. So every sector has gone through an efficient path that has produced results. When we look at the heating instead, we can see undoubtedly that the contribution to the pollution has increased, not only in percentages, in terms of percentage, but also in terms of absolute values. And you can see that as of today, it accounts for more than half of the pollution in terms of PM10 emissions. And believe me, if I say that things are not different, if we look at other pollutants, or if we look at green emissions elements such as CO2. Where do we stand in Europe, and where does Italy stand in Europe? In this Eurostat graph, which is on the lower right corner of the slide, quite difficult to see. Here it is highlighted what is the percentage penetration of renewables in heating and cooling in EU. And as you can see, Italy is a little bit lagging below the average. And we must say that is not actually also well positioned in the chart. Interestingly enough, those who are more virtuous in terms of using a clean heating, a sustainable heating, are those countries that consume more heating but do not consume any cooling. Because of course this graph can be a little bit biased by the cooling contribution. But if we assume, we sum up both of them, even in that situation, countries that typically should have milder temperatures in Europe are not that well positioned, in primis the Italian sector. Now, why we have come to this situation? My reading of the status of the scenario bring me on two considerations. The first one is that so far new technologies have been applied on a minimum portion of the building sector, mainly on the new buildings, which in effect have constraints and are built according to newer new standards with low emissions and very high efficient classes. The second is that in this sector, different from other sectors that we have seen earlier, also the content of innovation has been lagging a little bit. We will be able to to undertake a new trajectory for this sector only if we target those buildings who are not the new ones, which, as you may imagine, account for a minimal part of the whole built-up system in Italy. But if we are able to address those buildings representing from 85 to 90% of the residential buildings in Italy, which still cannot receive the due technological innovation in themselves. Consider that almost 50% of the building is has an age which is older than 50 years, that 22% is in very bad or in mediocre state of conservation, that 8% of them are of historical interest. And also here in Italy, together like France, Spain, but different from Northern European countries, we do not have the habit to demolish and clean up an old building and create a new one instead. We keep on having our national heritage. And this is the result. Those buildings, those 80 to 90% buildings have been built according to standards which require high temperatures. And so far, the technology of high temperatures has been only predominantly taken up by boilers and thermal plants that are fueled with gas, natural gas, gas oil, biomasses, and so on, and therefore so heavily contributing to the emission. The technology of high temperature heat pumps, and I underline the high temperatures because, as I said, the sizing of the terminals within the plants have been landed in a period in which we had small surfaces of exchange and therefore requiring high average temperatures, can move this sector towards the electrification, which means zero emission on site. So a totally clean city, if you think about, plus enables also the digitalization, which is most of the content which is present in the latest directive that I mentioned earlier. Because we are part of those ingredients, a relevant part of those ingredients that are the coordinates to move on a strategy for small buildings, which is the enabling technology. As you can see, the solution does not only rely upon heat pumps, but also on automation, that is on all the hardware that is needed to make the digitalization take place. The management and control platforms, of course, so all the protocols that have been used to link different aspects of the building, and of course the connectivity, because optical fiber or high connectivity is an ingredient that cannot be neglected. But when we look at also the consumption of a building, believe me that at our latitudes, the vast majority of the consumption of a building relies upon heating and cooling. So what can be considered the benefits that technologies which is proven now can bring on addressing the great majority of buildings without the need to, say, have a virtually total abandonment of the terminals and refurbishing of all the plants. There is, of course, as I said before, electrifying something, so that is fueling with electricity on site, something which is now fueled by gas oil or natural gas, of course, not reduce, eliminates zero emission on site. Second of all, it reduces, thanks to the efficiency, to the, in the first bullet you see the COP, which is, say, the yield that can be reached by these high temperature heat pumps in all conditions. The primary energy consumption, and I will give you a taste of it. Above all, will save also the bills of the consumers. Depending upon what we are going to substitute, we start from a 50% reduction of the gas bills used to produce heating when we talk about substitution with the electricity vector, and those percentages higher when we talk about gasoil and GPL. Plus, of course, electrifying the heating paved the way towards those topics that now are quite hot in Italy, that also have been mentioned in the earlier presentation, which is the energy community and the collective prosumers. That is, in a new organization of the whole system that takes into account on one side the demand and not only the supply. Allowing also intermittent sources to be more well managed in the system, having a more direct participation of the demand to the balancing of the system. Also, with the perspective of additional gains coming from the prosumers, if it is true that everything, of course, can be remunerated, considering that charges on the systems do not take place when we talk about energy communities, and also some grid losses are quite minimized. To finish my intervention, I must say that these goals can be achieved, are reachable. We are starting from a frontier where things can be, the potential that can be addressed is high, and the work that can be done is very high. To give you a sense on a system base what I'm talking about, this is a work that has been done by ARSE, who is the Italian Association of Heating Without Emissions, in a recent study. If we are only out of 8 million residential buildings that are present in Italy, if we only address 13% of them, having taken off say milder climate regions, having taken off situations in which it's more difficult to have an intervention of geothermy, of hydrothermy, and therefore reducing the addressable potential to 25% of the current residential heating sector. In Italy, we would be able to reduce 30 million tons per year of CO2 net. And the net comes from having considered that there is an additional production of electricity, which the study attributes to the marginal plant, which is the natural gas combined cycle, which is a prudent assumption, where you may allege that probably not in the next 10 years, the marginal kilowatt hour produced will not be produced necessarily solely by a CCGT. But if you use, of course, the Italian mix, the data are much higher. And secondly, also the purchase of primary energy. Italy has a primary energy that comes from abroad. And this, of course, can help at the system level, the improvement of our trade balance on the energy domain. Just to give you an idea of what is the impact from an environmental viewpoint, consider that this tackling 13% of the building, okay, which encompasses for about 25% of the thermal energy which is consumed via fossil fuels by residential buildings, is equal to the savings of CO2 that are provided by the deployment of 20,000 megawatt of photovoltaic, which is more or less what we have now in Italy. So in conclusion, I guess that the good news is that we have great margin to improve it. I underline at all what has been perceived, mentioned before, which of course we need when we look at the possible levers, we also need to draw our attention on a kind of a meritocracy that we can ascribe to the levers in order to select those ones that can provide the highest returns, not only in economical terms, but also from a sustainability point of view. And this is also the wish that I have when we talk about this topic and what would say we would expect also as a guideline from our government. This is it. I thank you for the attention, and my presentation is finished. Thank you, Mr. Kumbaroglu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pozzani. I would once again like to invite the attendees to type in their questions if there are any in the chat window. I've got an immediate quick follow-up question on the electricity sector. So your high temperature heat pump technology is very interesting and the results, but you also have presented the implications of the electrification of thermal consumption. This relates to the electricity production in general. And now electricity generation, to my knowledge, there is still much gas and coal also in Italy. So how does the electricity sector contribute to the emission reduction within the wider context?
Coal in Italy is almost fully abandoned. Actually, we had two plants that were, say, on stream. One in Civitavecchia, central Italy, from Enel, that has been recently stopped, and another one in Brindisi, which I'm not sure, but is, say, the strategy and the lines are to close it fully. Our, say, thermal sector, considering also the downturn that we are having in more recent years, as you may see, the demand is a little bit lower, the production is lower, and our CCGT works more in terms of gymnastic, that is, are used and of course gain more on the balancing system than on the day-ahead system, the day-ahead market. Our technology in reality is very versatile because you can insert it also in decentralized distribution systems. The electricity can be produced by a central plant, like an 800 megawatt CCGT plant, can be produced by photovoltaic, but also can be produced in total or in part, depending on how much you size it, from a decentralized distribution production, which is photovoltaic, for instance, no? Or photovoltaic panels that you put in your building. And in that sense, it integrates with the concept, the whole concept of energy communities. More in general.
10 minutes to left to this lesson. After I will stop.
Oh, okay. So the timing is very strict, I see. Thank you very much, Mr. Pozzani. I thought we could extend for a few minutes, but obviously it's very strict. Mr. Santo, I would like to invite you now a quick introduction. Mr. Dario Di Santo is with the Italian Federation for the Rational Use of Energy. He was a member of the board of directors from 2003 and to 2008 and has been a director since 2007. He's been carrying out consultancy activities concerning white certificates, energy service contracts, cogeneration, ESCO, etc., and has been participating in numerous European projects. Mr. Santo, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I need to be short, but I hope to be able to tell you everything I wish to. So two words about FIRE is an association established in 1987 to promote energy efficiency, renewable energy sources, and sustainability. We also manage the Italian Energy Manager Network on behalf of the Ministry of Economic Development since 1992, because in Italy there is an obligation for large consumers to have an energy manager. We have around 350 members covering all the energy sectors, so from a producer of technologies to utilities and ESCOs to large and medium end users, and professionals and experts acting in these sectors. And we do a lot of things related to energy management, from information and training to surveys and studies on the market or the energy sectors, to European projects, from policies to technologies to business tools to business models, etc. We are partner of EVO for the IPNDP protocol in Italy, and we are accredited to certify energy management experts in our country. So let's start with this question that can seem in an energy symposium quite simple and quite obvious. So do we need to use smartly energy? Well, and especially if we think about energy efficiency, which is the topic of this session, the answer usually yes, of course, why not? And policymakers, CEOs, technicians, we all agree with that by words. But if we ask then, okay, and what have you done in practice? Well, you will see that most probably they are not practicing what they preach. But usually there are at least 4 reasons to say that we need to use energy in a smart way. The first of all is, of course, the Paris Agreement. So the need to save mankind. It's a very strong point, but unfortunately also a very far away one. And usually company and also families are not thinking about what will happen in 2050. Secondly, there is, okay, policy targets. For example, the energy climate plan in Europe. This is more interesting for companies because usually that means there will be obligation for them and also support scheme. But then the targets are for 2030 this moment. So you are in any case thinking of something far away. When we have something completely different, which is UN Sustainable Development Goals, which is voluntary as a policy, but it addresses all the dimensions of sustainability. And even if it is voluntary, it is being adopted by all the company leader of the market worldwide. And it's something that will change our companies. Last, there is the energy cost reduction. So we cut our bills thanks to energy efficiency. This is, of course, the more prosaic of all the topic. And in my opinion, also the less important, even if it's usually what we try to use as a main reason to push towards energy efficiency. But what I want to say is that there is another more important reason to consider energy efficiency, renewable energy, and sustainability. And this is because all this can really impact the primary business of our companies, being them in the energy sector or not. Now, the COVID disease has accelerated many ongoing dynamics. For example, the need of digitalization, the change of the market, both at global and local levels, the change of the labor market. Let's think about, for example, smart working. There are issues with inequalities and wealth distribution. You can think about what, for example, Pope Francis is saying in the last years, but also many CEOs are trying to push together with thinkers all over the world. And of course, we have a very important effect on energy, climate, and environment, because, for example, when we think about the recovery from the disease, at least at European level, this recovery will be very strictly linked with sustainability. and energy efficiency and renewable energy. And this is very important because it's the first time in our history in which we think about recovery, we think about reconstruction, we think about increasing our economics, linking them with a smart use of energy. Of course, this means that the link between the possibility to access the financing markets by being more sustainable is accelerating. So it is not just to think about dedicated tools like the green bonds market, or which is, by the way, growing, or the indexes like the Dow Jones Sustainability World Index. But, for example, EU is changing its taxonomy, and that means that in the future, to access financing, public financing, you need to be sustainable. It's increasing the number of companies which are getting environmental and sustainability certification, like, for example, big corporations, and that are using certification of products like carbon footprint or ecolabel. And this is very important because when we speak about the energy sector, we have to link with two important changes. The first one is we are passing from a model in which the producer of energy, or the companies working in the energy sector, had the energy as their main core business. Whereas we are going towards a model in which we have a lot of small and medium producers whose core business is not energy related. And this is a very important point because, for example, if we have to rely on growing amounts of energy produced by renewables, we have to be sure that the small plants will go on producing this energy over the years. This, of course, is obvious for an energy companies because monitoring the performance of the plants is one of the basic activities of such companies. It won't be so obvious when we speak about families or small companies that can produce energy, but usually are doing something else. So this means the need for dedicated policy to warn this kind of small user when they are not performing as they can, and of energy service introduced and delivered by private companies in order to support these people to produce at high performance. The change is even more dramatic if we think about the end user. A company nowadays is facing a lot of opportunities. Just starting from supplying, you don't have just to buy a single price for a kilowatt hour, but you have spot markets, baseload markets, you have demand response, power purchase agreements. So a lot of different opportunities to obtain the kilowatt hours you need. Of course, you can produce them. And in the next future, you will also able to use storage system to better use the renewable energy power plants. Then you have, of course, traditional opportunities for process efficiency, so energy efficiency at service and process level. And you have a possibility to think about products that the market asks day by day more that should reduce their impact, both in energy terms and more in general in terms of usage of resources and waste management. And last but not least, even logistics is becoming more complicated because it is not just to buy a car or a truck to be used by the company. You can decide, should I go for the electric way? And in that case, shall I produce the electricity I need for my fleet? Or should I think about other fuels, biofuels, for example, to be produced by my waste? So there are really a lot of possibility for an energy management point of view, and this means a lot of complexity. This means the need, of course, of big data and artificial intelligence to be able to optimize all these possibilities. But that means also that we are facing a big change. And to face this big change, we need to change our mindset. We can't just go on by thinking about small optimization day by day. So, okay, we will have new compressors, we will have new engines, etc. No, we have to rethink our businesses. We have to rethink our processes in order to free the potential that is related to that. This is a figure that was proposed by McKinsey & Company in a book about unlocking industrial resource productivity in the manufacturing sector. This is very important. So we don't need just to be a technician in the traditional way. We need to be also philosopher to rethink. What does concretely mean? But for example, we can think of what Apple did with Macs in the last month, introducing the new processor, where its own processor based on ARM, so no more Intel processor. Not only it achieved double performance with respect to Intel processor, but it's going to use a quarter, a third of the energy usually needed for traditional processor. And this is really a big advantage and a big advance. But it also means that energy efficiency is not just an outcome, it becomes a driver of the change. You can think that the present new Macs from Apple, which has the entry-level models, has the same performance of a high-level Macs, which costs 3-4 times more, based on Intel processor. That's to say, the huge change, and now this is based also on energy efficiency. And with
may I ask you to wrap up because we are out of time at this time?
Okay, over 3 minutes, also because I was penalized on that. So when we think about the energy industry, we should think about resource efficiency in the generation process. So please start from the ISO 50001 because it really changed the way how the organization thinks about the use of energy and how the departments work for that, non-energy department, I mean. Secondly, resource efficiency in the supply chain, and this is links to the sustainable development goals. Third, to rethink how to generate. So the sources we need to use, the technology, the processes, if we have to pass through own production or to think about services for third parties, what to produce, because we pay electricity, gas, maybe hydrogen or other biofuels. Where? Because of course we need land, especially for renewables, but we also have directives to limit the use of land. So how to put together these different needs and why? Shall we really produce what we produce today? Or shall we also, as energy industries, try to offer energy efficiency services and demand side management? And lastly, of course, to think about the distribution and transport networks. Two tools to help in changing the mindset and delivering what we need. The first one is to link energy to the core business, to value proposition and the cost of risk that we need to implement and produce this value proposition. And for that, I really highlight the methodology we developed under the multiple benefits of energy efficiency project. By the way, we tested it in 2 utilities in Italy, Eni and ERA, with very good results. So you really get a very huge improvement in the economics of energy efficiency project by adopting this kind of methodology. And like...
But let's start, I'm sorry, mister, but let's start the next...
I'm closing. Last slide, okay? Thanks also to sustainable development goals, we can go on by putting together energy and the core business with all the sustainability dimensions. So for the energy transition, we need to change our mindset. We can't go on with business as usual, but we really think to change what we need. And for example, think about the mobility. my working can do much more than just passing to towards electrification of the transportation. So I'm sorry I have to go in a rush. It's not my fault. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Santo, and also to other panelists, Mr. Pozzani and Mr. Neri. It was a pleasure coming together this year, and I hope we get together next year within a physical conference once again. I wish you all a good festive season and a healthy remainder of the year. Thank you very much.